"You're not on the list," she said, lips painted red like a warning, eyes fixed like she'd spotted a stain on silk. Her voice sliced through the soft jazz humming from the yacht speakers. Every champagne glass in the vicinity froze midair. She stood there tall, radiant, wrapped in a silver gown that caught the light like it knew the cameras were watching. Clipboard in hand, posture rehearsed, smile sharpened. "Excuse me," the man asked, calm, his baritone low but resonant. The woman glanced at his ticket, real gold embossing, real event crest, real everything, then looked back at him, slower this time. Her smile didn't return. "This event is by private registration only," she said, "and your name is not on our guest list." The man didn't flinch. He held the invite steady in his right hand, the kind of hand that had probably signed more contracts than most of the attendees had read in their lives. Late 50s, dark charcoal suit tailored with precision. No cufflinks, no watch, no ring. Just presence measured, immovable. Behind him, two couples watched curiously. The woman in red whispered, "That's not how you speak to a guest." Her partner hushed her. The mood was changing. "Before we continue, take a moment. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments. And if you believe dignity doesn't require designer shoes, hit the like button and subscribe. These stories matter. We're glad you're here." Now, back to the man standing at the edge of power and pretense. The woman stepped closer, her clipboard pressed against her chest like a shield. "Sir, if you don't leave now, I'll have to call security." "Of course," he said softly. "Do what you must." There was no threat in his voice, no desperation either. Just certainty, like a clock that already knows what time it will strike. A young intern in a navy gown shifted awkwardly near the champagne bar. She watched the exchange. Phone tucked in one hand. She recognized him, or thought she did. Another staffer leaned into the woman in silver, whispering to loudly. "He's not from any of the yacht syndicates, probably snuck in from the marina." She chuckled, loud enough for a few nearby guests to hear, loud enough to be intentional. The man tilted his head. "That your protocol, public shame?" "Protocol," she repeated, savoring the word, "is how we keep events like this exclusive." Behind her, a projector was displaying the first yacht model for bidding. Whitehall, Italian name. Base price, $12.8 million. And yet the real auction, it was happening right here. In glances, in whispers. In who got told you belong and who got told you don't. The woman turned, waving over a security guard. Escort this gentleman off the deck. He didn't move, just looked at her, then looked past her, to the skyline, to the sea, to the moment that was about to rupture. Because what she didn't know was he hadn't come to make a scene. He had come to test a system, and it had already failed. "Security," she called, louder this time. "Escort him down to the dock, now." The guard approached mid-30s, muscular, earpiece coiled tight, suit just loose enough to move fast. But something in his gait slowed when he saw the man's posture. No panic, no protest, just stillness. The kind that makes a room pause before it knows why. "I'll need you to step off the yacht, sir," the guard said, less sure than expected. The woman in silver turned toward a nearby guest and whispered, not too subtly, "I warned them this would happen. These kinds of mix-ups always attract the wrong crowd." Wrong crowd. Two words that didn't need explanation. The intern near the champagne bar flinched. Her name was Lauren. She'd only been hired for the summer program through her finance school in Chicago. She'd read about microaggressions, studied systemic bias, but now it stood 10 feet in front of her wearing a dress that shimmered like justification. "Miss," she said quietly, stepping forward, "his invite looks valid." The woman turned. "You're not staff, dear, stay in your lane." Lauren froze, her lips parted, but the words didn't rise. The security guard shifted. "Sir," he repeated, "this is your last warning." Still no movement. The man's fingers gently closed the invite, folding it once with quiet precision. He didn't speak to the guard. He looked at the clipboard still clutched against the woman's chest. "May I see the guest list?" he asked. She scoffed. "What part of your not on it do you not understand?" He didn't blink. "I understand that this isn't about the list." Gasps weren't audible, but they were present, and stiffened backs, and halted sips, and glances traded like currency. A white man in a velvet blazer turned from the hors d'oeuvres table. "Is this really necessary?" he muttered. Another guest murmured, "Feels like overkill." Lauren took a breath. I think I saw his name earlier, actually." The woman's tone sharpened. "You think?" She turned to the guard. "Remove him." The guard hesitated. The man, still calm, said softly, "If you touch me, I want you to be absolutely sure about what you're enforcing. Because once this moves, it doesn't go backward." His tone wasn't angry. It was inevitable. A ripple spread. Then, from the far end of the deck, a laugh broke the tension. It came from a man with perfect teeth and a navy tux. He sipped champagne and smirked. "Oh, come on," he said. "Let's not act like this is shocking. Look at him." He motioned toward the suited man. "Does he look like someone who owns anything here? This isn't a ferry." His friends chuckled, some louder than others. One even clapped lightly. The woman in silver smiled not at the joke, but at the approval. "You heard the gentleman," she said, mockingly. "You don't belong here." Silence. Then the man finally spoke again. "To be clear," he said slowly, voice still low, "you're denying access based on appearance. Not paperwork, not behavior, but what you see." She crossed her arms. "I'm denying access because I don't believe you, and I don't have to." She didn't realize she had just spoken louder than the music. A few more heads turned. Lauren stepped forward again, her voice steadier this time. I think we should recheck the list. He's right. His past is authentic." "Enough," the woman snapped. "Your attempt. Don't embarrass yourself." The man glanced at Lauren, nodded slightly, not in thanks, but acknowledgement. Then he turned to the security guard. "What's your name?" The guard blinked. "UHE Nate." "Nate," the man said. "Has anyone here actually verified my invitation? Or are you following orders based on assumption?" Nate didn't answer. He didn't need to, because in that moment every protocol they thought they knew began to unravel. And behind them, the auctioneer's voice crackled over the PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to begin tonight's showcase." But the real event? It had already started. The sea breeze shifted. So did the room, because now the woman in silver clipboard clutched like a verdict had turned her tone. From condescending to corporate. "I need a flag," she snapped into her earpiece. "Unverified guest, possibly fraudulent. Remove access. Revoke ID token immediately." Behind her, the DJ slowly faded the music down. The auctioneer's voice on the PA stuttered, "We will begin shortly," before clicking off. No one was listening anymore. All eyes were on the man. Nate, the security guard, hovered awkwardly beside him, hand near his radio but not yet committed. Then came the next blow. The woman lifted the clipboard, flipped a page dramatically, and declared just loud enough to be heard. "He's not on any registry, not under G, not under V, not under executive access." She turned toward a tall man in a navy vest, another staffer, and gave a tight, smug nod. "Escort him now, before this becomes a disruption." The man in the charcoal suit still didn't move. His posture hadn't changed, but his silence, it now carried weight, the kind that bends the room. From the back, a voice cracked the tension. "Wait, I know who he is." It was Lauren the intern, voice nervous but audible. "His name's on the master list. I saw it earlier. A gold access pass, something marked." She hesitated. "Chairholder." The woman in silver spun on her. "That list is restricted, and you just violated your NDA." Lauren backed a step. "I'm just telling the truth." But truth was the last thing anyone wanted. He scored her off the deck too. The woman barked. Clearly someone let the interns play gatekeeper. Gasps scattered like ripples across water. One guest near the railing muttered, "Did she just fire an intern in front of 100 people?" Another whispered, over a guest list. The tall man in the vest stepped forward toward the CEO. Sir, he said cautiously, we need you to step back to the dock. You're not listed under tonight's verified participants, and the chairholder database isn't relevant to this event. The man raised his eyes slowly. Is that so? His voice was quieter than ever, but somehow it cut deeper. The tall man faltered, we're just following security protocols. This is a closed auction, not an open house. At that, a new voice chimed in sharper, older. Then perhaps someone should remind you who built the house. Heads turned. An older white gentleman with silver hair and a burgundy pocket square stepped forward from the VIP section. He leaned on a cane, but his presence carried more weight than the polished wood beneath his feet. He looked the suited man up and down, not with judgment, but recognition. I know exactly who this is, the older man said. And if you had bothered to check the ownership records for tonight's auction, you'd know that he has more stake in this company than anyone holding the clipboard. The silence was absolute. The woman in silver swallowed. Nigel, she started, voice dipping softer. But he didn't let her finish. You flagged the chairholder, he said coldly, on an auction he partially owns. While cameras are rolling, in a room full of buyers, someone's phone clicked. Then another. Then the flood began. A woman in a sequined red dress whispered, that's why he didn't leave. Another guest pulled out his phone. Press record. Say it again. He muttered, say who he is. The woman in silver stammered, we didn't have confirmation. He wasn't on my list. Because he doesn't need to be on your list. Nigel cut in. He is above it. The suited man didn't gloat. He didn't nod. He simply looked back at her and said, you mistook access for authority. And finally, he took a step forward. Just one. But it echoed. The woman stepped back, and in that shift the air cracked. The auction hadn't even started, but the bids were already in. And someone had just lost everything without even knowing what was on the table. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. The storm had already arrived. He was just opening the floodgates. The man in the charcoal suit reached into his inner pocket, not rushed, not dramatic, just deliberate, pulled out a sleek black phone, no logo, no case, just function. He tapped once, then spoke. Angela, he said, activate protocol Echo 5. On the other end, the response was immediate. Understood, sir. Asset matrix is live. Shareholder ID confirmed. Ownership level flagged the full visibility. You are now mirrored across all live auction nodes. He didn't look up, but the ripple already began. First, the lights shifted, a subtle flicker across the LED panels that lined the yacht's upper deck. A signal small, but enough for anyone in logistics to know. Something just rerouted. Next, the woman in silver's earpiece crackled. Her face paled. Controls pinging a protocol override. She whispered to the tall staffer beside her. Some kind of internal access breach. But the man, the one she tried to erase, was already ahead. Because Protocol Echo 5 wasn't just a verification tool. It was visibility. In the corner of the yacht, a side monitor blinked. The screen previously looping luxury footage of yachts at sea now displayed something different. Chairholder override engaged. Name, Alexander V Graves. Stakeholding, 41% Zenith Auction Group. Access, Executive, Founding Tier. Murmurs, audible now. A guest gasped. Wait, that's him. The investor from Geneva. Someone else, near the oyster bar, dropped their glass. Lauren, still standing nervously near the bar, let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. The woman in silver blinked. No, this can't be right, she muttered. Alexander turned to her. Is there a problem with the feed? She stammered. I was just following procedure. Whose? The question wasn't loud, but it hit harder than any scream. Behind her, Nate the security guard took a slow step back, radio still in hand. Suddenly unsure where he stood in the hierarchy, the woman in silver looked around, eyes searching for anyone to step in. No one moved. Alexander stepped forward, closing the distance, not threatening, just present. You denied me entry to an auction I helped build. You called me unregistered, fraudulent, and you flagged me for removal in front of my peers." Her voice cracked. "I didn't know who you were." He nodded, and that's exactly the problem. Then he turned, faced the room, faced the moment. "To everyone here, my name is Alexander Graves. I am chairholder and founding stakeholder of Zenith Auction Group, and for the past 22 minutes, I have been tested, dismissed, and nearly ejected from my own event." The air tightened, phones raised. No one interrupted. "This is not about me. This is about what we built and who we pretend it's for." He let the silence settle. "I arrived without a tailored suit, without an entourage, without announcing myself, and in doing so, I became a target not for fraud, but for visibility." He turned back to the woman in silver. "You weren't protecting this event. You were protecting your assumptions." Behind her, the tall staffer, the one who followed her order to eject him, slowly lowered his head. "I wasn't trying to offend you," she whispered, voice small. Alexander nodded once. "You didn't offend me." Then his voice sharpened, not louder, but lined with steel. "You exposed yourself." She stepped back. "You're terminated," he said, "effective immediately. Access revoked. Escort not required. The system's already locked you out." Her wrist buzzed. The bracelet on her arm, a digital ID tag, blinked red. She looked down. No signal, no access, no return. And from the far end of the deck, someone clapped. Just once, then again. And soon, the whole deck joined in, not like applause at a concert, but the kind you give when justice finally speaks. Lauren smiled. Nate stepped aside. And Alexander, he didn't gloat. He just turned to the nearest chair, sat down, and folded his hands, as if to say, "Now that the noise is over, let's begin." No one spoke first. They didn't have to, because silence had shifted sides. Alexander Graves sat calmly at the edge of the main deck, same charcoal suit, same expressionless calm, but now every pair of eyes moved because of him, not against him. The woman in silver, gone, not escorted, not dragged. She walked herself down the dock stairs, heels clicking softer than before, digital ID deactivated, reputation evaporated. Her clipboard still sat on the podium, forgotten, irrelevant. The auction had not yet begun, but something far more valuable had already been sold. Perception. Across the deck, the energy changed. The guests no longer whispered, they watched, some with guilt, some with awe. A few with curiosity sharpened into respect. Lauren, the intern, stood still near the champagne table, phone still in her hand. Her fingers trembled, but not from fear anymore. She'd seen something she would never unsee. Alexander looked her way. He didn't wave, didn't smile, just gave a single nod. A thank you made of stillness. And she understood. From the corner, the older gentleman with the cane Nigel stepped closer. He raised his glass and said quietly, but with full intention, to the man who reminded us what ownership really looks like. The guests hesitated. Then, as if guided by instinct, many raised their glasses too. Alexander didn't raise his. He wasn't here for celebration. He was here for correction. From behind him, a younger man in a navy jacket, early 30s, tech-looking, clearly affluent, but watching with cautious admiration, finally asked the question the whole room had been thinking. "Why didn't you say who you were from the beginning?" Alexander turned his head, because saying it would have proven nothing. He said, "But your reaction to not knowing told me everything." A hush. Then someone else spoke up, a woman in a green satin dress near the stairs. "We didn't know who you were." Alexander looked at her, steady. "You weren't supposed to. That was the point." She nodded slowly. Her eyes dropped. "I'm sorry." He didn't say it's okay. He didn't need to, because this wasn't about forgiveness. It was about acknowledgement. Another guest, an older black man near the railing, dressed impeccably, quiet until now, stepped forward. "Mr. Graves," he said, "I've followed your work for years. Real estate, private equity. I knew the name, but not the face. Today you made it unforgettable." Alexander offered him his hand. They shook, to men who'd seen the same rooms, felt the same air. been mistaken for the same outsiders in places they built. From the corner, Nate the security guard took a step forward. He looked unsure, then finally said, "I should have checked. That's on me." Alexander nodded. "You did what you were told." Nate's jaw clenched still. A moment passed. Alexander spoke softly. "The next time pause, even half a second. It might change everything." Nate looked down, then nodded once. "Yes, sir." And just like that, he stepped back, no shame. Just change. The screen on the side wall still displayed Alexander's stake. The Zenith Auction logo glowed beneath his name. Then, a new message appeared. "Shareholder presence confirmed. Auction begins in 3 minutes." A beat. Then Alexander stood. He walked slowly toward the podium, his steps now unchallenged, his silence now commanding. He didn't clear his throat. He didn't announce himself with fanfare. He simply said, "Ladies and gentlemen, now that we've cleared the confusion, let's begin." The room barely had time to breathe before another voice cracked through the speakers. "Hold the auction." The words didn't come from Alexander. They came from the upper deck where a slim figure stepped forward in a crisp white suit, polished to shine. His name, Elliot Carrington, Vice President of External Relations at Zenith Auction Group. You could hear it in the way he walked, smooth, rehearsed. A man used to talking for systems rather than people. He gripped the railing, then said louder, "I think we need clarity before we proceed." Alexander turned slowly. Elliot descended the stairs like he owned them, his designer loafers whispering over the teak wood. "We all recognize the unfortunate misunderstanding," he continued, voice even. "And we all respect your stake, Mr. Graves. But let's not let a single incident derail an entire evening." Guests exchanged glances. Someone near the DJ booth whispered, "Here comes the cleanup crew." Elliot stopped near the podium, but not too close. He kept a foot of distance, not out of respect, but defense. "I spoke to the event team earlier. What happened wasn't personal," he said. "It was procedural. We have thousands of names across multiple tiers. Mistakes happen." Alexander didn't respond right away, because that's what power does. It pauses. It chooses its moment. Then, "Mistakes don't repeat," Alexander said. "Patterns do." Elliot's jaw twitched. "With all due respect, you denied me, Elliot." The sentence dropped like a weight. A beat. "You weren't on the deck, but your signature was on the protocol, the list she used. It came from your department." Elliot's smile faltered. "We generate access rosters based on criteria from assumptions," Alexander cut in. "Based on appearance, attire, name familiarity, not ownership, not legitimacy." Murmurs now. More phones raised. Lauren, still watching from behind the champagne tower, recorded again. Alexander didn't stop. "This isn't just about one incident. It's about a pattern of curated exclusion. I've watched invitations shift, names removed, passes reassigned, all filtered through a lens you call brand preservation." Someone near the back gasped. A guest in a gray linen suit looked down at his event badge and whispered, "Is that why my cousin's +1 never got in?" Elliot raised both hands. "We curate guest experiences based on discretion." "Your discretion," Alexander snapped, "not our values." The room grew tight. Elliot tried to pivot. "If there were oversights, I take responsibility." Alexander's gaze sharpened. "You don't take responsibility. You cover it. But not tonight." Then, calmly, he tapped his earpiece. "Angela," he said, "authorize audit pull for internal access filters, past 90 days. Send results to deck screen." "Already running." Her voice came back. "Initial logs uploading now." Elliot blanched. "There's no need to escalate." "Too late," Alexander said. On the screen behind them, a live feed blinked. "Access tier audit, user Carrington. Filters applied. Appearance tagging. Attire index. Name origin flags. Outcome, 70 for guest exclusions over last 2 months. 81% POC. 0 executive review logged." The silence was brutal. A woman in a green jumpsuit whispered, "You flag people by their names." Elliot stammered, that data is internal only. It's not meant to be public. Alexander replied flatly. So was your prejudice. He stepped closer now and said, You're suspended, effective immediately. Security access frozen, and your resignation request will be on your desk by morning. Elliot opened his mouth then closed it, and just like that, he turned. But the silence didn't let him go quietly. It followed him down the same teak stairs. Not one clap, not one whisper, just truth finally louder than protocol. Alexander turned back to the crowd. For those who came here tonight expecting luxury, he gestured to the screen where the last audit line blinked. Violation, pattern of selective exclusion confirmed. You just witnessed something far more valuable. He raised the auction hammer slowly, the one meant for billion-dollar boats. But tonight, it hit a different kind of deck. Thud. Let's begin. The auctioneer's gavel still echoed in the air when the sarcasm landed. Must be nice, someone muttered, owning everything. It came from the velvet lounge at starboard, a shadowed corner reserved for the very privileged. The speaker leaned back, legs crossed, wrist dangling a platinum Rolex-like bait. Clinton Harrow, 47, venture capitalist, loud donor, regular face in luxury magazines, and tonight, the last man in the room who thought he was still untouchable. His words weren't directed at anyone in particular, but they pierced the air like a drunk uncle. At a family funeral, buy your way through the system, then give speeches about fairness, he continued. What a plot twist. A few people chuckled nervously. Most didn't. Alexander didn't look his way. Yet, Clinton sipped from his champagne, then raised his glass half-heartedly. To the revolution, he said. The tension snapped. A guest across from him, a young black woman in a deep purple blazer, stood up. No, she said flatly, to accountability. Gasps fluttered. Clinton's smirk curled. Oh, relax. It was a joke. The woman didn't blink. Funny how the jokes always punch down. A ripple of murmurs spread. Then another voice chimed in, this time from a man in his 60s near the back. I watched you laugh when they tried to eject him, he said to Clinton. Didn't hear you say a word then. Clinton shrugged. I don't get involved in drama. Alexander turned his head finally and spoke. Not drama, he said. Truth. Clinton scoffed. Truth is overrated in a room full of people pretending they care. Alexander stepped forward. He didn't raise his voice. He lowered it. That's how you command a room. I don't pretend, he said. I show up. I sit quietly. I observe. And when people reveal themselves, I don't interrupt. I let them talk. Clinton stood now, mock clapping. Bravo. The silent titan speaks. What's next? A TED Talk. A sharp voice sliced through the noise. You're embarrassing yourself, Clinton. All heads turned. It was Nigel, the elder statesman with the cane, who'd spoken earlier in Alexander's defense. Power isn't loud, Nigel said. It doesn't wear logos or throw insults from leather couches. Clinton rolled his eyes. Oh, now it's a sermon. No, Alexander said calmly. It's a mirror. He stepped closer. You wanted to make this moment small, to remind yourself you still mattered more than decency. But tonight wasn't about you. That's what unsettled you. Clinton's mouth twitched, but nothing came out. Alexander didn't stop. I didn't come here to be recognized. I came here to remind people that access isn't the same as value, and the people you dismiss, they remember. Silence. Then Lauren, the intern, stepped forward again. Her voice shook, but she steadied it. I remembered, she said. You all looked past me tonight, until he spoke. Alexander glanced at her, nodded. A young black couple near the middle raised their glasses in her direction. Clinton looked around, and for the first time all night, he saw what he never expected to see. He was alone, truly, deeply alone, not because of status, but because of character. He sank back into his chair, didn't say another word, and from somewhere behind him, a voice whispered, Now that's the real auction. Alexander turned from the crowd, not because he was done, but because he needed a moment with himself. He stepped toward the yacht's edge, fingers gently grazing the polished railing. The moonlight bounced off the water like it had something to say. And for the first time that evening, the crowd quieted not out of fear, but reverence. He closed his eyes, and memory returned. 30 years ago, a much younger Alexander Graves, fresh MBA, fresh suit, shoes to stiff, voice to unsure, stood outside a glass office in downtown Manhattan. He had just pitched his first real estate proposal, 8 slides, 3 projections, and a financing plan built on sleepless nights. The managing partner, white, tall, legacy surname, flipped through the deck without looking up. "This is impressive," he said. Alexander exhaled. Then the man continued, almost chuckling. "For someone like you." The words didn't hurt right away, not until the silence that followed them. Alexander forced a smile. The man leaned back and added, "There's a market for guys like you. Underserved neighborhoods, microfunding, minority grants, you know, your lane." That was the first time someone called him invisible money. They meant it as a compliment, but he knew what it was. It meant, you're brilliant, but don't come too close. You're valuable, but not in this room. You're profitable if you stay small. He walked out the day and never went back, but the silence stayed. Back on the yacht, Alexander opened his eyes. The same sea, the same rooms, different suit, same game. He turned around slowly, and the deck greeted him with stillness, not empty, but waiting. He spoke not to any one person, but to the space between them all. "Do you know why I didn't say my name at the door?" No one answered. He didn't expect them to, because that moment when you didn't know me was the most honest version of who you are. He looked around. "The way you treated me before the list, before the screen, before the numbers." He paused. "That's what this night was about." Someone near the back whispered, "This is history." He continued, "I remember being told I was too polished for Harlem investors, but too urban for Fifth Avenue backers, too young, too black, too quiet." He glanced toward Lauren. "I learned to be quiet on purpose, so people would show me who they were." Then his voice dropped just slightly. "I've spent 30 years building rooms where silence wasn't a weapon, and presence didn't need permission." The wind picked up gently like it had been waiting to. Alexander looked down for a beat, then back up. "I didn't come here to start a scene. I came here to finish a pattern." And with that, he walked back toward the podium, back toward the gavel, back toward the helm. But this time, he wasn't the only one walking, because guests began to move too, not away, toward him, one by one, wordlessly, as if the deck itself had shifted from auction block to witness stand. The night air thickened, not with tension, but with realization. Alexander stood at the podium again, same position, new gravity. The gavel sat untouched, but everyone knew what was coming next wasn't for sale. He looked out at the guests. Eyes met him differently now, not with speculation, but with reckoning. He adjusted the mic, then said the words that no one expected. "This auction was a lie." Gasps fluttered. He let them breathe. "I don't mean the items. The boats are real. The bids will happen. But the event, this night, the list you all fought to get on." He paused. It was never about yachts. The wind hushed. Even the waves seemed to wait. "This," he said, tapping the deck gently with his fingertips, "was a stress test." He scanned the faces in front of him. Some froze. Some leaned in. Some finally understood. A curated test to see how this ecosystem, this industry treats people when the filters drop, when status isn't announced, when power walks in quietly. He gestured behind him, to see who opens doors and who closes them with a smile. Clinton Harrow shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Nigel raised an eyebrow. Lauren stood taller. Alexander continued, "For the past 2 years, I've been building something bigger than a fleet, a capital trust, a leadership circle, a venture network for black and brown investors, not performative seats, not diversity optics, real power, quiet, global, unapologetic." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small slate black folder. This, he held it up, is the founding charter for Equinox Holdings, a multi-billion-dollar strategic fund already seated across 3 continents. Real estate, tech, infrastructure, culture. Someone whispered, wait, he built Equinox. Alexander nodded slowly. It launches tonight. He laid the folder on the podium. Tonight was our final evaluation. Every major auction guest was observed not for their bids but for their behavior. A silence deeper than discomfort followed. Some of you, he continued, scanning the crowd, are about to receive offers that will change your lives. Board seats, partnerships, capital infusion. He held their gaze. Others will not. The truth hit like cold salt wind. He didn't say names. He didn't need to. They knew. This wasn't a punishment, Alexander said. It was a mirror. He looked directly at Clinton now, and some reflections were informative. Lauren blinked. Nigel smiled, just slightly. Then Alexander turned back to the rest. Leadership isn't about announcing who you are. It's about showing who you protect when no one's watching. He picked up the gavel, let it rest in his palm. And if you only honor power when it's visible, you were never honoring power at all. Then, with perfect control, he struck it once. Thud. The auction begins now. But the real event, he looked around. It already happened. He hadn't even finished lowering the gavel when the ripple began. A man in the back-pressed white shirt, cufflinks shaped like miniature anchors, jolted upright. His face flushed crimson beneath years of polished tan. Trevor Dorn, chief liaison of guest vetting, also known in quiet corridors as the list maker. He didn't clap, didn't smile, didn't move right, because Trevor knew what was coming. And Alexander, he'd already seen it. He tapped his earpiece again. Angela, pull guest vetting logs for the past 12 months. Cross-reference with name-based exclusion filters and external payment receipts. Angela's voice responded instantly. Running now. Corruption indicators already above 80% threshold. Murmurs turned to whispers. Phones raised again. Trevor took a step back. I think there's been a mistake. Alexander didn't look at him. He addressed the room. Over the past year, our vetting department has rejected 419 guests based on vague criteria, none of which passed legal review. Many of those guests from underserved regions, first-time bidders, independent investors. He turned slowly, now facing Trevor. And yet, he tapped the folder on the podium. You approved 76 unregistered entrants, all tied to private consulting payments, most from your own shell company. Trevor froze. His mouth opened, then closed. I didn't do this alone, he said suddenly. Carrington was gone. Alexander interrupted. And if you're waiting for rescue, you're already late. He looked to the left. Security had already moved. Not the flashy kind, not dramatic, just efficient. To silent staffers with black lapels stepped toward Trevor, who now stood with arms stiff at his sides, the weight of luxury crushing his breath. This is absurd, he hissed. You think anyone here will care about paperwork? Alexander smiled, not with his mouth, with restraint. This isn't about paperwork. It's about integrity and infrastructure. You filtered humanity through favoritism, sold access like tokens, gate-kept futures. He raised his hand. Angela. Yes, sir. Lock the accounts. A pause. Then her voice, firm. All of them. Confirmed. Somewhere across the deck, a man checked his phone and gasped. Wire's been reversed. Another woman clutched her clutch. My login just failed. Trevor stepped forward, sweat now visible. You can't, this is a breach of protocol. Alexander turned his full attention toward him now. You broke protocol when you sold the gate. Then, lower. Now it shuts behind you. Security reached him. One gently took Trevor's elbow. He didn't fight. He just looked down and disappeared below deck. Alexander exhaled slowly. Not satisfaction. Closure. Then he faced the crowd once more. There's no price high enough for dignity. No title that justifies erasure. Tonight was a reset. The screen behind him flickered again. This time, it displayed Zenith system status. Gives guest list reset complete. Gives funds reallocated. Gives new access model live. Alexander stepped down from the podium, walked through the aisle of guests, and as he passed, people moved back, not out of fear, but out of respect. And this time, he didn't need to ask for space. The room made it for him. The music never resumed. No one missed it. The silence that followed Trevor's removal wasn't awkward, it was earned, cleansed. Like the room itself had exhaled for the first time all night. Alexander didn't walk with urgency. He moved slowly through the guests, hands behind his back, eyes scanning, not judging, not gloating, just witnessing. And slowly, they approached him. One by one, a man in a burgundy blazer was first. "Mr. Graves," he said, voice low. "I didn't speak up earlier, when I should have." Alexander stopped, looked him in the eye. "Then don't speak for me," he said. "Speak for the next one." They silence. The man nodded, visibly humbled. Next came a couple in their early 30s, both dressed in designer formality, both fidgeting like children before a parent. "We want to be part of the Equinox fun," the woman blurted. "We didn't know about the barriers. We just assumed." "That's the problem," Alexander said gently. "Assumption is the currency of exclusion." She bit her lip. The man beside her added, "Is there any way to make it right?" Alexander studied them, then said, "What's right isn't something you buy. It's something you become." He stepped past them. Next was Lauren. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She simply held out her phone, screen facing him, still recording. Alexander smiled, just slightly. "Turn that off." She did. "I'm not going to forget this," she whispered. He nodded. "Good. Just don't let them forget you." Then came Nigel Kane, composed, but his eyes glassy with something ancient and rare, pride. "I've waited half my life to see a moment like this," he said. Alexander gripped his shoulder, firm. "Then help make sure it's not another lifetime before the next one." He walked on. And then, of course, came Clinton Harrow. Sheepish now, jacket unbuttoned, drink abandoned, the smirk erased. He didn't have a speech, just a sentence. "I misread you." Alexander stopped, tilted his head. "No," he replied. "You read me just fine. You just didn't think anyone else would." Clinton looked down. Alexander kept moving, back toward the edge of the deck, where he'd first stood, where the night had begun, not with insult, but with clarity. Because the truth was, the insult hadn't changed him. It had revealed them. He turned, one last time, to face the room. "This wasn't vengeance," he said quietly, but clearly. "It was a mirror. And what you saw tonight about yourselves, about the system, only matters if you choose to carry it forward." A few guests nodded. Some stared. Some just reflected. He stepped toward the staircase leading below deck, where a private exit waited. But just before descending, he paused, looked back, and said, "Not everything can be bought back," then disappeared down the stairs, leaving behind a room no longer elite, but awake. The harbor was quieter than it should have been. City lights shimmered across the water, reflections flickering like candles unsure of their own flame. The wind carried salt, but not sting, just memory. Alexander stepped off the yacht. The night behind him didn't chase. It yielded. He walked alone down the narrow dock toward a smaller vessel, sleek, dark with trim. No name on its side, not for flash, for discretion. A man stood waiting on deck, mid-40s, West African features, dark suit with no tie. A stillness in his posture that said, "I knew you were coming." Alexander boarded. The man offered a single nod. "Mr. Graves." Alexander returned it. No words, just respect. The boat pulled away slowly. No roar of engine, just motion. The kind of motion that happens when the noise dies down and truth has spoken. Inside the cabin, the lights were warm low. The man poured the small glasses of water. "No champagne tonight, not after what was just cleansed." "You stayed longer than I thought," the man said. Alexander took the glass, sipped once. They needed to see it end. The man raised an eyebrow. "And did it?" Alexander stared through the window. "Something did." Silence. Then the man spoke again. "You know," he said, "they'll tell this story 10 different ways, make you into a symbol, a cautionary tale, a threat, a legend." Alexander didn't flinch. "I didn't do it for the story." The man smiled. "I know." They sat quietly. The boat rocked gently, not unsteady, just real. Then the man asked, Why didn't you let them announce you? Would have saved you a lot of time. Alexander turned his head slowly and said, because kings don't ask for chairs, they build tables. The man grinned wider now, and if they don't, Alexander looked back out toward the city. Then we remind them, he finished the sentence like a whisper carried on waves, that we are the architects. Another beat. Then the man said, almost to himself, that's why we don't announce kings. Alexander didn't respond. He didn't have to. The boat drifted farther from shore, cutting silently through the water, leaving behind not just a party but a pattern undone. And in its wake, a new shape was forming, not of wealth, not of vengeance, but of standard, one they would never forget. Fade to black,